Hello everyone, this is Todd Blankenship with RocketStock.com, and today we're talking about Aspect, a new pack of minimal motion graphics that you can use to upgrade the look of your video projects. The idea with this pack is to give you everything you need to create nice, clean, minimal motion graphics for your projects. In this pack you'll find both color and white options, which both can be customized in terms of color, and you'll also find transitions, many different types of lower thirds, and you'll find elements to create bigger text elements within your video as well. With this pack, you're going to want to use some type of modern looking font. A great example, and the one that we used in the demo, is Lato, which is a free Google font. So if you want to create graphics that look like the ones in the demo, you'll want to go to Google Fonts and download the font Lato. However, really any sans serif font that's nice and clean looking will look great. These elements were created for 4K projects, but you can scale them down to use as needed for your 1080 projects as well, or really any size that you need. These elements are all created in MOV format, so you'll need to make sure that you have QuickTime Player installed to use them properly. These elements were created to be used in Premiere, Final Cut, and After Effects, but you should be able to use them in any nonlinear video editor that supports RGB plus A video. So first I'm going to show you how to use these elements in Premiere. Here I've imported both the color versions and white versions of the Aspect pack, and you'll notice that if you go to the color versions, they all have just a slight color to them, and obviously you can change that to be whatever you'd like. So here we have just this lower third element here, and if I were to just drag that into a sequence, I can show you really quick how you could change the color. So right there it's kind of a purple, you can see. I'm going to go over to the effects panel, and I'm going to search for a fast color corrector. I'm going to drag that right onto that element there. And then I'm going to go up to Effect Controls and scroll down here. And on the hue angle, you can just change that slider and see there, now we're getting kind of a green and blue. And there's a little bit of a gradient to it, so you can get some really nice looks messing with the color that way. But the question is, how do you use these elements to create a really nice looking lower third? So I'm going to go ahead and pull in some footage. So here we go. This nice little guy smiling into the camera. So what we're going to do is we're going to give him a lower third. And I'm going to use one of the elements from the white version of the pack here. So I'm going to go into the custom lower thirds folder, custom LTs, and I'm going to find something that I like. I'm just going to kind of go through, and that looks really cool. It has this kind of a little wipe thing, and then this little line that turns kind of slanted. I think that's going to look awesome. So I'm going to drag that down on top of the footage. One thing that's really neat about this pack is you don't have to use it the same way that everybody else does. It's just kind of elements that you can use to customize your own look. So this one thing I really like is, so here we have this kind of wipe, and I don't really like it coming in from that side. I actually want it to be the other way around. So, and I want the slant to go the other direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Effects, and I'm going to go to a horizontal flip. And I'm just going to drag that onto the element there. So now, there we go. It's slanted the other direction. So now it comes in from that side, and slants that way. So if you wanted to, you could do your own kind of thing there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just add some text to this lower third. So what you would probably do is on one side of it, have the subtext for the lower third, like what the guy does, and then over here have the name appear. So let's give him a name here, Jimmy Smith. And I'm going to go ahead and change that over to Lato, like I said before. So let's just grab Lato font here. Okay, and let's change it to black. Get some nice bold look going. And I actually want to go ahead and I'm going to retype that and make it all caps. Now, obviously it's a bit too big, so I'm going to scale that down, something like that. And one thing I really like with the Lato font is when you kern it out a little bit, it looks pretty nice. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, just like that. There we go, looking nice. And then I'm going to go ahead and select our text here, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and I'm going to drag one layer up. That's going to make a copy. So now we have two text elements, and I'm going to slide this one over to about there. And we're going to take this one and change the text weight to, let's try light. There we go. That's looking pretty cool. And he is the CEO and founder. And I think we should make this text quite a bit smaller. So something like that. Looks pretty cool. And then obviously it's just kind of place it where it looks nice. Something like that. Kind of move it out right about there. Something in that range. And then I'm going to take his name text and position it. And again, like I said, this is about customization. We're giving you the ingredients. Now you can cook whatever you want with it. So that's looking kind of cool to me. And the other thing is you got to figure out where you want it to fade in. And obviously you can use transitions however you want to do it, but we want to keep it nice and clean. So I'm going to have this text fade in as that wipe kind of comes across. So I'm going to right click at the start of this subtext element, the CEO founder element here, and I'm going to right click, select apply default transition. So now see how it fades in right as that wipe comes across? That looks really nice and clean. So then right as this line starts to tilt, I'm going to go ahead and have his name text slide right in. And so we'll do the same thing. We right click at the front of that text element, select apply default transition. And this one I'm going to have move a little bit quicker. So let's see what we've got. And actually I've decided I'm going to have them fade about the same time. And now that I'm looking at it, I think this line is maybe a little bit too high. And again, it's just a matter of kind of customizing and fine-tuning until you find what you like. And I also think it might be a bit too large. So I'm going to scale that down, slide that over, place it right in the middle, position it where I like it. Okay, so here we go. I messed with it a little bit, kind of kerned out this text a little bit more, just kind of moved things around until it looked the way that I wanted it. And here we go. Now we've got a really cool, clean lower third for Jimmy Smith here. And if you wanted to have a transition, so let's just go back to our footage layer here and let's use one of our transitions to go from one shot to another. So we have Jimmy here. Let's transition from another shot into that. So I like this shot of the people here. So I'm going to drag this in and we're going to use transitions from the aspect pack. Again, we're going to stick with the white. And you'll see here, these transitions, there are 12 graphics files for the transitions, and there's also 12 matte files, and those correspond with each other. So if you use the graphics 1 transition, you're going to want to also use the matte 1 matte file. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to use graphics 1, and I'm going to drag it down, and you want to make sure that you have enough video on both clips to cover the entire transition. So first we're starting with the graphics file here. I'm going to drag that down, and then I'm going to grab the matte file and drag it down as well. So one thing that's really important in here is the order of how things happen. What the matte file does is it cuts out the footage to reveal the next clip. And what the graphics file is the graphics of the actual transition itself. So it's really important to think about layers. So one way to do it is to have your second clip on the third layer. So I'm going to just shift all this down. So here we have the first clip, then we have the graphics layer here, then we have the second shot, and then we have the matte file. And I'm going to go ahead and just clip this here on the end just so keep everything nice and clean. Okay, so once we get everything set up, the first thing that we always want to do is make sure that everything is scaled to the correct frame size. Again, these are made for 4K, and if you try to use it for 4K, everything's just going to look really weird and messed up. So what you need to do is select all of your elements from the pack. So here it would be matte 1 and graphics 1. So we're going to select both of those and right click and make sure that scale to frame size is selected. And what that's going to do is it's just going to scale it down to fit your frame size. So in this case, that's 1920 by 1080. So now we need to point everything in the right place because this is what we have right now and it just looks weird, obviously. So we need to point everything in the right way with a track matte key. Okay, so go over to your effects and search for track matte key. And we're going to drag that to every layer but the matte layer. So just take that, drag it to the bottom footage, the graphics layer, the second shot, and we're going to leave the matte layer alone here. And now what we're going to do is go individually into each clip and just make sure everything is pointed to the right spot. So here the matte layer is on V4. So we want to use video 4 for the matte selection here. So on matte, I'm going to select video 4. And I'm also going to select reverse. Now this is kind of hard to explain, but the best way to think of it is the bottom two layers are always going to be reverse. Okay, so just keep that in your head. And then on your graphics layer, we're going to select video 4 and we're going to select reverse. And then on this layer, we're going to select video 4, but leave it not on reverse. Okay, so now check this out. Really nice clean transition here. And that method's going to work for whatever you want. Now, again, if you wanted to change the color of this line, that would be very easy to do. All you have to do is select your graphics 1 layer here, and that's where this actual white line lives. We'll do like a tint effect here and drag that onto the graphics 1 layer, and we're going to map white to whatever color you want. And there you go. Now you got a red transition. So now let's get started in Final Cut. First, I'm going to show you how to do transitions. So I have the shot here of the city, and I'm going to build a transition for it. So I'm going to grab first a graphics layer here, and this is graphics 4 from the colored version of the pack. I'm just going to drag that down and lay it right on top and make sure it's lined up to the end of the first clip. I've also got the matte layer for that file as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that down, put it right on top of the graphics layer, and then it's really easy. All you got to do is select your matte layer here, go over to the compositing tab, and we're going to select a silhouette alpha. And what that's going to do is everything below the matte layer is going to get cut out based on the matte layer itself. So here we go. Now we have this little transition, and there's still some of the colored elements left behind. And to place some footage underneath of that, all we got to do is select all of those elements. We're going to right click and select new compound clip and hit OK. And then now we can drag another piece of footage underneath. And there you go. Now you have a really cool transition between two clips. And say you wanted to color this transition differently in Final Cut, it's really easy to do. We're going to go back into our compound clip. You can double click on it and it'll open it up. And then on the graphics layer, we're going to select the graphics layer for that transition. I'm going to go over to our effects here, this button right here, and we're going to find a color effect, and we're going to use hue and saturation. So just select that and just drag it right onto the graphics layer there. And we're going to go up to our effect up here and change this U angle slider. There you go. You can change the color however you like. Or if you wanted to, you could remove the color altogether by changing the saturation. But let's also give our happy mountain lady a lower third. So I'm going to go ahead and call out her Instagram account. Here we have a really cool Instagram lower third animation. And you'll find in the pack that we have these types of logo animations for all the different major social platforms. But I'm going to go ahead and use Instagram, and I'm going to drag that down onto our clip here. So obviously that's really, really big for this shot. So we're going to select that, and I'm going to go to our transform tools here, which you just click that and you get this little bounding box and you can edit the size of stuff. And I'm going to just scale that down to a size that seems appropriate, something like that. To create text in Final Cut, all you do is you go up to your generators here, which is going to be this little button right here. So I'm going to go ahead and use a basic title and drag it on, and we'll put it right on top. Now, the thing is we want the text to appear right about probably there, and we'll do it with a fade. So I'm going to go ahead and just extend that. And now you'll see right here we have our title. I'm just going to position that appropriately. To start, we're going to change the font to Lato again. So just scroll down, and again, you can use whatever font you want. And I'm going to go ahead and keep it on, let's try light this time. Yeah, that looks nice and clean. I'm going to go ahead and just type in her social details here. Let's say, we'll call it Jessica Travels. She could definitely be a Jessica. And I'm going to drag that over here. And now as that line kind of comes across, we're going to have it fade up. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go back over here, and we're going to select the transitions, and we're going to use a cross dissolve. And so I'm just going to drag that onto the beginning of the clip here. And it's going to add one at the beginning and end. That's going to look just fine. Let's see what this looks like. See right there. Just as that thing comes across, it fades up. And you can speed this up if you wanted to. It's a little bit slow, I think. Let's try this. I'm going to go ahead and size that down a little bit. I'm going to have it start, I'm going to have it start fading in kind of as that square starts to come back. So we're going to change the timing just a little bit. And again, this is all about customization. You can use these elements however you want to use them. So here we go. There you go. That looks really nice. All right, so now let's get started in After Effects. I have this really cool shot of this guy climbing up a mountain. Let's say he's kind of like a explorer of some sort. I'm going to give him a lower third. To start off, I'm going to go ahead and find which lower third element I want to use to call him out. And I'm going to go back to the custom lower thirds folder for that. And I was already looking before. I think this one is going to be pretty cool for something like this. So again, it's just an element that we can use to make a really clean lower third. I'm going to go ahead and drag that right into the comp here. And again, this is for 4K, so that's going to be a little bit big. So I'm going to go ahead and hit S for scale, and we're going to scale that down to something that looks a little bit more reasonable. I'm going to go right in that area. I'm going to position it right next to him there. And next, I'm going to right click down here, and I'm going to go to New, Null Object. Then I'm going to select our footage, go over here to Track Motion, and I'm just going to leave it on one tracking point. We're just going to track the position here, and I'm going to go ahead and just find, let's go to the beginning of the shot, and I'm just going to select his head here. There's a lot of good contrast there. We'll get a good track. And I'm going to go to options. I'm going to make sure it's set to luminance, and I'm going to make sure it's set to stop tracking and confidence at 90%. These are just the tracking settings that I usually like to use. And I'm also going to go to edit target and make sure that our null object is selected, and I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to track forward, and it's going to track his head moving through the shot, and we're going to make the lower third kind of move along with them. It's just going to add just a little bit of something extra to the shot. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And now our tracking data is applied to the null, and we're going to go ahead and position the lower third element here where we like it in relation to him and his head that we tracked before. And I'm going to go ahead and select the lower third element, and we're going to parent it to the null object. And what I need to do next is add the text. I'm going to kind of, actually, on second thought, I'm going to go ahead and scoot that down just a little bit so that we're not kind of having trouble reading under the sun there. And I'm going to go to our text tool. And right here, I'm just going to click and give him a name. And we'll call him Anthony Baker. I'm going to go ahead and change the font over to Lato, the font that we have been using this whole time. And I'm going to go and use a bold. And I'm going to scale that down. I'm going to slide it next to this kind of bigger sort of block here. And we'll put it right about there. And then now we're going to go ahead and give him the subtext. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate by hitting Command D. I'm going to shift that down. We'll go ahead and change that one to something like, let's try hairline. It's a little too, let's do light. And let's change it from being all caps, and we'll call this one, actually for this one, I'm going to go ahead and go all undercase. So we're going to say he is a traveler explorer. Now that is a cool subtext to have. And I'm going to scale it down quite a bit and place it left aligned to the smaller box. And I'm going to go ahead and scale that down even further. Something like that. And now let's go ahead and select both of those text layers, and we're going to parent it to the null object. I'm going to turn on motion blur for both of those layers, and then I'm going to turn on motion blur for the lower third object, and I'm going to turn it on for the entire comp. I also want to add a little bit of subtle animation to the text elements through the use of position and transparency keyframes. So I'm going to select both of those. I'm going to hit the P key, bring up position. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and hit T for opacity. And I'm going to set the stopwatch for all 4. And then I'm going to scoot that, let's say maybe 13 frames, or let's try about a second out. So now we have the keyframes for where we want the animation to land. I want it to fade in, so I'm going to turn down the opacity down to 0 for both of those. And I also want them to kind of shift from the left a little bit to the right. So I'm going to go ahead and take the position, shift it a little bit on both. And then I'm going to select all 4 of the ending keyframes. I'm going to right click, go to Keyframe Assistant, select Easy Ease. And I'm going to go into the Speed Graph Editor, just grab this guy, move it out. And now we have this animation for both of those text elements, and we can decide when we want them to come in. I'm going to start his name right about there, and then the subtext can come in right about there. And let's RAM preview and see what we've got. So there you go, really nice little lower third animation there. And in After Effects, if you wanted to change one of these white elements to be a color, all you'd have to do is go up to Effect, Generate, Fill, and now you can change it to whatever color you'd like. So in this case, let's say kind of an orange maybe would look cool, something like that, or maybe a green, something that kind of nice little contrast to the scene. And alternatively, if you had one of the colored elements, so let's just switch it out with the colored version. So we'll go back to Custom LTEs. Number 2, I'm going to hold down the Alt key, just replace it real quick. So here now I've used the colored one, which is purple. So if you wanted to change the color but still keep that nice gradient on the graphic there, you'd go to Effect, Color Correction, Hue and Saturation. And now you can change the hue. And there you go. And if you wanted to use the transitions, let's just pull in another shot here. We got this woman doing some yoga by the lake. It's going to work about the same as it would with the other programs. What we're going to do is we're going to drag one of our graphics layers down. So let's just see what we got here. Let's try graphics 7 on this one. So I'm going to drag that down. Make sure we have enough video to cover both sides. So we'll do something like that. And I'll duplicate graphics 7, select matte 7, hold down the Alt key and drag it on top. What that's going to do is replace it. And so now we need to make a duplicate of the matte file. And I'm going to drag one on top of the footage layer for the second shot. And I'm going to select, oh, you know what? I almost forgot. First thing we got to do, select all of those clips for the graphics and the matte layers. Let's right click and select transform fit to comp. That's because, again, we have 4K elements for a 1080 comp right now, so we need to scale it down. That is one thing that is really easy to forget, and it'll confuse you a lot if you do forget to do it. So now I'm going to select our second shot. I'm going to go to the track matte options here, and I'm going to select a alpha matte. Okay, and then on the graphics layer, I'm going to select a alpha matte inverted. And so after a quick RAM preview, here is a really cool transition that we've got between two shots. And again, if you wanted to change the color, go to your graphics layer, hit Effect, Generate, Fill, and change it to whatever color that you want. So I hope you really enjoy these elements and get some great use out of them. There are a lot of different ways that you can use them, and go through all the different folders and just make sure that you're getting the most out of these elements. Always keep in mind that these are scaled for a 4K project, so if your project is in HD, you're going to need to scale them down. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact our support staff and we'll be happy to help you out. Good luck with all your projects and enjoy.